Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.
Okay, in this follow-up, we will discuss about Indonesian Islam, but more particularly, we will compare to what extent Islam in Indonesia is different from mainstream Islam, let's say, in the Middle East. And also, on the other hand, how diverse is Islam in Indonesia or Indonesian Islam? How diverse is it? And what implies that diversity? What are the challenges and opportunities of that diversity? So, thank you so much, Professor Suli.
Thank you
for this session. So, okay, my first question is, how can we assert that Islam in Indonesia is indeed practiced and lived differently from the Middle East? In what ways? Even though it's the same religion.
Excellent. Islam in Indonesia, in some ways, different from different practice from those in Middle East and even in Western societies, because Islam in Indonesia is enriched with local culture. The preachers of Islam to Indonesia, those who introduced Islam in Indonesia, they came to Indonesia, introduced Islam to the local people without changing directly or radically the tradition of the culture. So they respect local culture. They respect how local people have good relationship with the nature, relationship with the sea, relationship with the mountains, relationship with the river. So those, local people have those long-standing tradition of interaction with the nature. When the Muslim preachers came and they saw those traditions, they did not change radically and did not say that they are all Muslim and everything, but they tried to introduce Islamic faith, Islamic values, gradually, peacefully, and try to make them aware of, first of all, the existence of Allah, the existence of God, who created the universe, created nature, created human being, and allow those good things happen to nature and human beings. With that introduction, Indonesian Islam developed gradually together with the local tradition and culture. And that's why Indonesian Islam is different from those of the. For example, one of the traditions is how to call for a prayer. We call it adhan, right? Adhan. Every Muslim in the world belong, adhan is a call for prayer. But Indonesia, with the geographical situation that are different, a lot of mountainous areas, and people live far away from one house to other houses. When they try to call for a prayer, in addition to call with an adhan, they use beduk. They use percussion that can be used to call people the prayer time is coming. Some people call it bid'ah. It's not something that the Prophet ﷺ used, but it's the same thing. It's a message that call people to prayer, because there was no sound system, there was no microphone, there was no speaker at the time in the beginning. So using beduk, the percussion, the big percussion, they use the percussion that give big sounds, send the sound all over the village, so people know this is the time for prayer. They can come to the mosque, they can do prayer at their houses. But this is a way of embracing local culture in Islam. And, Indonesian Islam using sarung,
Yeah.
the males are use sarung when they do bathe. They don't use it in the Middle East.
Yeah.
They don't know sarung in the Middle East. But Indonesian Muslim, if you know Indonesian Muslim, they use sarung.
Yeah.
They use kopiah. That's a local culture. And there's also Islam. And there's the beauty of Indonesian Islam. So, the, interaction and acculturation of local culture with Islamic values, that's what makes the beauty and the colorful of Indonesians.
It's so amazing because it's
And not even, you don't even talk about the food, right?
yeah, it's very true how comes to our mind in Indonesia. Sorry, Muslims like just very turban or
Yeah.
like dark color for women maybe. But you can find Indonesia a colorful face of Islam. How Islam can be colorful indeed. And this is not just because you want to give a different face, but because this is spiritually grounded.
Yes.
Because people historically have been more connected to the environment and this is how the Indonesian Islam, how the spread of Indonesia since the early beginning was different from the Middle East. How religion and local culture can go hand to hand,
Right.
without clashing. And this is too educational in itself because the preachers were right. When it's all like it's like preachers from the outside. They didn't convert. They didn't bring like swords or
Yes.
things like that. Like in the Americas, like in Spanish, they conquered what is today, for instance, Mexico, and with the sword and destroy temples. But in Indonesia, is the opposite. We find that they preserve the local culture, and still the locals gradually start to adopt Islamic faith because it's not clashing. Because in the end, it's all the belief in one God, and they were wise. It says that everything within the environment is part of God's creation.
Right.
That's why the distribution of religion and culture is something to value because it's something like a gift that Indonesia can offer to the world. We can learn more. So, as we can see, well, this is a fact. Every foreigner that can get the opportunity to come to Indonesia, for sure we get more insights about Islam, that another face, another perspective, and whether you believe or not in Islam or in other religion. But still, the question is, why is it that Islam in Indonesia is not that common in the global scenario compared to Middle Eastern Islam, compared to Turkey or Iran, or why we don't hear much about Indonesia or Malaysia or Southeast Asian countries? Even Indonesia has the largest Muslim majority in the country. Particularly, you have been abroad also, so why is it so that Indonesian Islam is like underrated, like not really popular in the global scenario? What makes it?
I think there are three reasons of that. First of all, because of the geographical location. Indonesia is far on the south. It's not close to the center of Islam in the Middle East.
Yes.
So, those who learn Islam from the Middle East and believe that the source of Islam is the Middle East, will find that those who are far from the center, which is this is the Middle East, Indonesia is far south than here, and consider Indonesia as the peripheral of the center of Islam, they will assume that Indonesian Islam is no longer true Islam, no longer the original Islam, because it's too far from the center. That's the geographical reason. The second reason is that Indonesian Muslim, they speak their own language. We speak Bahasa Indonesia. This language is very important for us is unifying language for a huge country. Indonesian people themselves, they speak more than 700 local ethnic languages, but these different of ethnic languages are unified by one language called Bahasa Indonesia. So all Indonesian people, most important Muslim people, they speak Bahasa Indonesia. They produce the words in Bahasa Indonesia. All most Islamic education teachers, they produce their words in Bahasa Indonesia to teach Indonesian people. And that's why people outside of Indonesia, they don't read Bahasa Indonesia. They don't know the words of Indonesian ulamas. They don't know the words of Indonesian Islamic teachers. That's the second reason. Because we use Bahasa Indonesia, so it's excluded from the mainstream of international languages, whether it's English or Arabic. The third reason is Indonesia is a very blessed country. We are blessed with abundance of natural resources. We are blessed with a very nice place to live. So I think Indonesian people is less people travel outside the country. And even though you might find Indonesian expatriate in Europe, United States, or even around the world, but the majority, they still love their country because their country are very beautiful and full of natural resources. They can live everywhere in Indonesia. So that Indonesian people are not quite recognized outside of their own country because they didn't travel too long. Not many Indonesian people, work outside of Indonesia. And that's why they don't really recognize it. And for these three reasons, why Indonesian Muslim cultures, Indonesian, the richness of Indonesian Muslims are not fully recognized or known by others outside of Indonesia.
Yeah, that's so true. Actually, there are plenty of natural, cultural sites that still yet to be recognized by UNESCO.
Exactly.
Because I think, my country, Mexico, has plenty. But when I see Indonesia, it has the same things to offer, but still not really recognized yet. And it has to do with that. Perhaps because the science is in the southern hemisphere, is part of the Middle East. Indonesians are not prone to go like Indians or Filipinos. They prefer to stay in their own country. That's why. And they
use the Bahasa.
They use the Bahasa as a cultural, social, intellectual capital of Islamic toleration is in Bahasa Indonesia.
Unlike Filipinos, even the market is similar to Indonesia, but Filipinos, they speak English better.
Or Malaysia, or Singapore.
Yes.
But Indonesia, perhaps because it's a huge country with lots of groups, they have this national language. But still, because it is a fact, we find that moderation is, I would not say a brand, but something like a signature, at least nationally, that something that the world can appreciate or even learn from Indonesia. And this is very interesting because, we find that there is not just one type of Islamic school. We find that at least, let's say, 3 types.
Yeah.
The madrasa, that sadly for foreigners, madrasa comes to your mind, indoctrination, like Al-Qaeda, the Taliban,
right.
Like the people are brainwashed to recite blindly the Quran and to become extremists. Sadly, madrasa has a negative connotation, but in Indonesia, it's the opposite to see. But it's not enough. There is also something more like locally, like peasant bread, something very Indonesian, and Islamic model of education, very Indonesian, and last but not least, the Islamic school, something more like modern, let's say. And could you share more about that, or those types of education we find here?
Certainly. Yes. When Islam was introduced to the local people, we can see that there are local sites, initially called known as Pesantren or Pondok Pesantren. And it was the initial educational institution for Indonesian Muslims. When Indonesian people introduced to different models of schooling, the Indonesian Muslims started to learn about madrasah, and they formed madrasah. And later they learned about sekolah from the Dutch and from the people who studied in the Western society. So even in sekolah, in school, religious education is an important part of the curriculum of school. Those who go to madrasah, they want to maintain the religious tradition. They want to maintain the religious practices. They want to maintain the faith within their children. That's why the parents, they send their children to madrasah to learn more about religious values, religious traditions. But when people send their children in sekolah, they want to let their children learn about sciences, learn about the wide range of knowledge, but still maintain the faith within the school with the religious education. But with Pesantren gives more religious training to children. So those schools or those educational institutions becomes the richness of the Muslim education in Indonesia. But remember, even with those madrasah, pesantren, Indonesian Islam is also rich with different interpretations and different religions. Let's say different organizations, social organization or mass organization like Nahdlatul Ulama, Muhammadiyah, and Persis Persatuan Islam. These organizations, they are social organizations, but they also have some sort of different interpretation to Islam, and they can coexist, although they have different practices of Islam. In terms of, for example, the way they use adhan as a call for prayer, and the way they perceive what makes the ablution is no longer exist among Muslims before they do the prayer. And there's some traditions that are different between these different organizations, but they continue to coexist and support each other. And, with the richness of the tradition of Indonesian Muslim, there was a motto or a jargon that the government introduced. They said we have to promote three peaceful coexistence. Coexistence, yes. The first is coexistences of people of different interpretation within single religion. Different schools within single religions. Those who believe in, those who practice, let's say, Shafi'i school, Mazhab Shafi'i, Hanafi school, Hanbali school, they practice different ways, in some ways different way of prayer, sometimes, but they can coexist, they can live together. So this is the first coexistence. Coexistence of people of different interpretations of Islam. The second is coexistence of people of different faith. So Indonesia is rich not only by different interpretation, but also different faith. So people of different beliefs, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Confucianism, Catholicism, they should live as coexist peacefully. And the third thing is coexistence between religious believers and the government. So the government should protect every religion. The government should facilitate every believers to practice their beliefs, to maintain their beliefs. They have to be protected by the government to practice and maintain the religious practices. So these are three coexistence.
Yeah, so it's so interesting how this is ranging from like put it the Islam religion to national state. And yeah, because Indonesia is the political philosophy is called Pancasila.
Exactly.
This is very important to know because even Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world, but still not an Islamic state.
It's true.
Because there are also Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, Confucians, Catholics, and they coexist. These religions are officially recognized. And even Pancasila is something indigenous but still grounded in Islamic principles.
Yeah.
So, some people dare to say that Indonesia is technically like semi-religious, semi-secular, things like that, because it's not wholly a theocracy, not wholly secular. Could you explain in what sense the Pancasila or this ideology is grounded in Islam in simple terms?
Yes. I remember what the late Professor Nurkhalis Majid promote one day in late 1980s. He promoted secularization of Islam. There was some attacks that received when he said doing promote secularization Islam. He didn't say secularism, but secularization, meaning that there are a certain aspect of our life that should be based on religious beliefs and practices.
Yeah.
There are several aspects of our life that we should not only depend on our religion. Let's say, when you are sick, you don't go to the ulama.
Yeah.
You will go to the doctor.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you don't trust in your God. That doesn't mean you don't trust in your faith. But because the doctor, even the doctor is not Muslim, you trust the doctor more than the ulama to cure your sickness, right?
Yeah.
That's secularization. You use your brain, your rationale to decide where to go, where to make decision. That's secularization. Now, with that secularization, Nurkhalis Majid meant by we have Pancasila. We have this day. There are areas in which religion should take place. Religion should play an important role. But there are areas that we should not, oftenly use our religion. In voting, for example, we should not oftenly use our religion. In creating law, social law, or let's say laws of police, we should not oftenly use religion. So we have to properly use religion in its place. Proportionally use religion in its place. And when it comes to using your rationality, using science, you should not use religion for everything in your life. So that's secularization according to the first way. Now back to Pancasila. Now, Pancasila is a result of a long discussion, long search of the founding fathers of the country on how to manage this very multicultural nation. They already coexist peacefully before the independence. They already lived together before the independence. They already exist everywhere before independence. How to maintain this peaceful coexistence? We cannot use one ideology and let this one ideology lead the country, because others might feel excluded.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to formulate something that can accommodate differences, different ideologies. And cleverly, our founding fathers formed Pancasila, and we consider Pancasila as an outstanding formulation to unite the country, and therefore Indonesian people should protect and promote Pancasila to younger generation to maintain the existence of the multicultural society.
Yeah, that's so interesting because we can summarize that indeed the Islamic faith is, or the Quran itself is more like a guidance.
Exactly.
Recognize it's not to be like a recipe that you should do like step by step, and otherwise that's why we have extremism and eventually atheism because of this narrow-minded interpretation. But if we just think twice how the Quran can be like guidance, this is what we can find like in Indonesia, like Pancasila is guided by the Quranic principles rather than blindly or strictly following it, because if you do that, it will be like chaotic.
And as you mentioned, all the 5 principles of Pancasila, you can easily find them in the Quran. From believing the unity, social justice, democracy, and humanity. All those principles you can easily find them in the Quran. So, in other words, Pancasila itself is very important.
Exactly. That's what makes will determine what we can call Indonesian Islam, or the voice of Islam in Indonesia.
Yes.
So, well, I think that's all for us for this session. Thank you, Professor, for your attendance, for your insights. And, well, so this is all for us. So, stay grounded, stay balanced. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.